I don't want to be in academia for after I was done my PhD, and since I signed a contract, I thought, okay, I'll continue, but I have to figure out what I'm passionate about. And so it took like, I'd say 4 months of me trying to find a hobby, of something to do. It wasn't Dragon Boat anymore, but I found myself reading a lot about entrepreneurship, and then I gave a talk to my lab group on how to network and market yourself as a researcher. There was a student in my lab group who was applying for the Dobson Cup, and so he said, you know what, Mitalie, you should really apply to the Dobson Cup. But I said, you know what, I have a lot of ideas, but I'm new. Anyways, while that was happening, my current business partner, Audrey, at the time, she had an idea for a waste management company, but she needed someone who had expertise in soil science and who was also interested in business. Now, I don't know, that's a pretty tough person to look for, but she ended up finding me because my mutual friend in the lab introduced us, and the moment we saw each other, it was love at first sight. And this happened, I met her January 2015, and now we've been in operation since June. And basically, Grounded is a waste management service for coffee shops, and what we do is we take the used coffee grounds and the organic waste, and we compost it and produce a high-quality natural fertilizer. And it's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride since the start, but I'm loving every single moment of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Mitalie. Next, Chloe, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your initiative, Vent Over Tea?
Yeah, my name's Chloe Chow. I graduated from McGill for the Bachelor of Science in Psychology, not this spring, but the spring before. And my organization is called Vent Over Tea. I'm just curious, how many of you have heard of Vent Over Tea? Has anyone? Oh, that's great. That makes me really happy. So basically, I was finishing up my last year of my undergrad in psychology. And how many of you guys know the page Spotted McGill? Yeah. All right, so I was procrastinating for exams, looking on the Spotted McGill page about 2 years ago, like this time of year, right before finals. And there was all these posts of people being like, I'm super stressed out and depressed, and I just moved to Montreal, I don't have any friends, I don't know what to do. I tried to go to the counseling service, and I don't know, the waiting list is 2 to 3 months. And basically, as I was browsing this page, I saw this girl, Sarah, who ended up becoming my co-founder, had commented on one of these posts saying, I'm looking to start some sort of support service. If you're interested, send me an email. So I was interested. I sent her an email, and we ended up meeting up the following week. And she basically told me her story, which was that she was diagnosed with PTSD about 6 years before the time that we met. And she had gone to therapy for many years to kind of seek support dealing with her PTSD symptoms. And at the time that I met her, she had kind of resolved her PTSD, but she was still going to see her therapist on a weekly basis simply because she enjoyed having someone to kind of listen to her daily stressors, someone to empathize with her, someone that she could just vent about, whatever was going on. That person had no tie to her life. And she realized that there kind of wasn't a service for people who just needed someone to talk to. So there's all kinds of different therapies that you can go to. There's the public system, there's the private system, but they're really more directed to people who need therapeutic counseling. And the services for people who just need someone to talk to, there wasn't really something like that. So I was really inspired by this. It definitely resonated with me. I was someone who tried to get counseling during my undergrad and also was put on a crazy wait list. So the two of us kind of decided, let's create something. And her idea was to have it be like a really simple service that all you would do is go to a web page. You'd pick a time slot and you'd pick a cafe, and someone would go meet you there and listen to you talk for an hour about whatever you wanted. So we didn't do kind of any market research. We were literally just like, let's just start something. We were both still in school. So we rounded up a group of psychology students. We all took an active listening workshop, and then we found some computer science students who put together this really, really basic landing page. It was super ugly, kind of operated like a Google form. People would just put in like their name, their info, what they wanted to talk about, and then we'd have someone delegate internally, and someone would go meet them. And we operated like that for about 9 months. And then just under a year ago, we decided to enter the McGill Dobson Cup. And that really just kind of propelled us forward. We had all this great mentorship. We were being challenged. We had like goals to set. We got a new website finally that it was actually functional and had like nice design. And so from that point on, we just kind of started proliferating by like spreading through word of mouth, and having people, use the service, people having our friends just try out the service, and then once they did that, they would tell their friends, this is what I did. And we ended up winning first place in the social entrepreneur track this spring. And that was really amazing for us because we got money, we won $10,000, and we also got quite a bit of attention. So that's kind of our story, and I've been working on this part-time since then. We're still kind of struggling in terms of figuring out how to finance ourselves, but right now we're just in this phase, we're trying to just collect vendors, we call them, just trying to get as much people using the service, and then we're gonna see about kind of moving to other cities, other communities. Right now we're still very McGill-based, but yeah, that's where we are for now. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks so much, Chloe. So now moving on to Ben, do you want to just tell us maybe a little bit about yourself, your background, and maybe even your involvement with Change Here?
Okay. I'll talk broadly about my involvement. So basically, I guess my name's Ben, as he had said. I guess the way that I got involved was through the student strike in 2012. Essentially, for me, the crux of the most potent political idea for empowerment of people in general to me was the concept of accessible education. And so when this mobilization started happening, I became quite involved. From there afterwards, we were all excited from a victory or whatnot, and we had all these new networks developed. And so we were, within our networks, we were wondering, because I'm not like what I'm involved in is not like a traditional enterprise. I'm involved in cooperatives and kind of like horizontal organizations, and so networks are extremely important. But so anyways, we took our network or whatever, and we started to mobilize the community around food issues on campus because the contract was up for renegotiation, and we saw that as an extremely potent area where we could make a really large change on campus. The food system, which has like a captive audience, as they like to say, of like 52,000 people that are on campus. So there's a lot of money there. And where is that money going? Like which farms is that money supporting? And those kinds of questions. So we mobilized the community and effectively created the Hive Cafe Solidarity Cooperative, which has 5,000 members, or just under 5,000 members right now, when we're going into our third year of operations. We saw 2,000 people sign up in the first 2 months of operations. We had our first pretty major profit actually in the last month, so there's pretty huge milestones that are taking off right now on that front. But anyways, I'm sort of like peripherally, I'm still on the board of that organization, but I'm like less and less involved. And so I'm working on, I guess you could say like a network approach towards transitioning different parts of the economy towards bottom-up ownership and bottom-up distribution of surplus and things like that. And so through that, one of the main components of this, and so the organization's not fully launched at this point, so I'm in a very entrepreneurial stage, because what I'm working on is actually a bit of an ecosystem. And so within this ecosystem, we have a conference called Transform Montreal, or Transformer Montreal, however you want to call it. I'm curious, actually, has anybody heard of this? Because we only did 1 year, but we did it last year. Yeah, we have one person in the back, of course, Nick, of course, you've heard of it. Anyways, so this is a conference about, we take like a movement building approach to, we put kind of North Star models forward for people to see that like cooperative economies and cooperative organizations are not, they're not like fringe, and there are extremely successful models. And so we try to like throw those into the spotlight so that people can see that you can make a good wage within these organizations. You can also have democratic control, anyways, you can have like a systems level approach to social innovation and social entrepreneurship that involves democratic components. So I guess Jonathan also was talking about how you go to these conferences or whatever, and then you don't have the follow-up action afterwards. And so our ecosystem keeps that in mind, and so we follow up with kind of like action-oriented while we're working on our action-oriented, what would I call it? I guess we'll call it like a camp to try to like intensively train people in like how to work horizontally, how to use like technologies, like communications technologies to work together across maybe geographic lines. But anyways, the purpose is to be useful, and I take Jonathan's critique to heart. The purpose is to be useful. These conferences to like not just have people inspired by thoughts, but to actually like move that towards building. So anyways, maybe that doesn't make a ton of, it's not totally grounded, but yeah, I guess I could leave it at that.
Awesome, thanks Ben. Now, just to get into a bit more of the substantive discussion, if we could start with Chloe. Could you tell us a little bit about the biggest barrier that you faced in founding your initiative and how you overcame it?
Yeah, our biggest barriers have all been dealing with other people. And this is something that actually Jennifer Lonergan is going to be speaking to you guys later. And this piece of advice, she actually mentored me during the Dobson Cup. And this is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received. She said, everyone's going to want to help you. Everyone kind of has a kind heart. Everyone's going to want to help you. But no one really has time. And so in order to kind of receive help in an effective way, you have to make things really easy for other people. But this advice kind of came to us maybe later than I would have liked it to. So after we first got set up with this like landing page template thing, we waited 9 months on these computer science guys who said they were going to help us build a website. And we were friendly with them, like we got along well, but and they kept on just telling us, it's coming, but it just never did. And then recently this summer, I put together a template website using Wix, just like threw something together. It worked well. It's actually still what we're using right now. Then this summer, we were put in touch with these guys in the States who helped build websites for nonprofits, and they said, yeah, we can build you guys a website for like something like $150 US. And they had like shown us some of their other works, and it was all great. But then again, just like ended up falling through, ended up taking like 3 months. We ended up like paying them and then having to harass them for our money back. So it's been like a lot of like web and tech issues. But right now we actually have another website. It's not online yet, but it's there. And this we got, this was like just like a kindness of someone else who heard me speak on the radio about 3 weeks ago, or maybe a month ago. But he's like a professional in web development. And he actually has a team of people to, do these things. So it goes back to kind of like the help thing. A lot of people are gonna wanna help you. But it's also about accepting the help that's right. And so accepting help from people who aren't necessarily qualified is almost worse sometimes than not accepting the help. So that's kind of a lesson that we've learned, is that, it has to be the right kind of help.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
And same question for you, Mitalie.
Okay. That's actually a very good question. Can everyone hear me? Is this okay? Okay, I see a lot of heads nodding. So barriers, I don't even know where to start, because this is a conversation that could possibly never end. I'll start off with a big one. For us, it was land. It took us a while to figure out where we were going to do our composting, because most of our cafes are located downtown in the city. And that was huge, but it took us months to try and figure it out. And it was just a lot of hustling, and the biggest thing was networking and putting yourself out there. It's amazing because Audrey and I, we gave a talk at a Business on Tap entrepreneurial leadership series at the Mac campus, and there was someone who worked at the Mac campus. His name was Ron Henry, and I still remember after our talk, we had mentioned we were looking for land because we wanted to start operations in like 5 months, and everyone thought we were crazy that we're saying we're going to start and we don't have land yet, but we were just convinced that we will figure it out. And sure enough, we bumped into Ron. He came to talk to us after the presentation, and he said, you know what? I have a farmer friend who is also an entrepreneur, and he loves green initiatives, and I'm sure, he'd want to talk to you girls. So Ron and I met with Stephen, the farmer, and sure enough, he liked our idea so much, he said, I have a lot of land, and I would gladly give you ladies a piece of it to do your composting. So we are composting on his land, and it's just insane because if you told me that at last year, I would have thought you were crazy. But what the point Chloe brings is a very good point as well. But you just have to keep going until, you get where you need to be. And if it means extra hours, it means extra hours, and these type of things are enough to keep me up at night. Another funny story, because it was a huge barrier, so we have land because we need land to compost. We also need a truck because we can't, carry all this waste on bicycles, right? So we we decided to get a used truck. So we got, our first truck was, I think we got her, and her name was Big Bertha. We got her in maybe May, and because we wanted to start operations in June. It's traumatizing. So this truck decided to break down on us like a few days after getting it, and we were in the middle of doing runs. And we thought, we cannot continue operations with something faulty like this. And it got to a point where we were doing a run, and it was our third cafe of 8 that day. And I think third of 5 or 6. But anyways, the truck breaks down. We still have 3 more pickups to do, and we can't get anywhere. The next cafe was 4 or 5 kilometers away, and the other cafe was close to Audrey's place. So I had a crazy idea, and this was a huge barrier, obviously, transportation. I had a crazy idea of walking all the way to the other cafe, picking up the waste in our bins, and then walking to the other cafe. Audrey thought I was crazy, but it was 12:30, midnight, when we arrived home from walking 6 or 7 kilometers with just compost across the city. And that just shows the dedication we have. And it doesn't matter if you encounter barriers, you have to figure out how to overcome it. And it's just as simple as that.
Awesome, thanks. And Ben?
Yeah, I think the point of that people can be not really a barrier but a challenge, especially within the cooperative sector, and especially within the university environment too, with the cooperative sector, because people are constantly turning over. You don't have people if you have a co-op in a community, you're gonna have people that live there for 50 years or whatever, maybe 20 years, 10 years. People live there for quite a long time, but in a university you have people that, first of all, probably don't have a lot of experience running organizations, but also they're turning over extremely quickly. So in that context, I mean, you have, there's a lot of training needs essentially, and you need to structure the organization extremely particularly. So that was a pretty big challenge. It wasn't really a barrier. That's a part of the challenge. If you're doing something that's supposed to last for the long term, it might be a little bit challenging at first to get it going. Definitely not getting in your own way. That can be a barrier too. If sometimes you want to say yes to everything, but you really have to strategically pick what you're actually going to say yes to and prioritize tasks. I mean, maybe this is it's probably more obvious to business students. I was never actually a business student, so like Jonathan was mentioning though, there's that risk of burning out if you take on too much, and definitely that's a thing that I've seen within quite a few people. Is the either approaching burnout or just straight up people definitely burn out. And so knowing how to read yourself, and not get in your own way, that's definitely another one of the challenges. And then I guess the last one too is this sort of precarious in-between period when you're going for some big asset or something, or some big ask. So we had to get a free, not a free kitchen anyways, we had to like lobby the university for them to give us a kitchen for our co-op at Concordia. And you know, we had to pick the right time to do that. And of course, like we exist within a political environment there, so you know, you can't really read into the future and know that you're putting your time into the best place. And so you just kind of have to hope for the best and then work towards it as much as you can, and sort of deal with that. Like in a co-op, it's like organizational precarity, where like the whole organization doesn't really know if you're going to get that. But I guess in a different kind of business model, it might be like your own sort of, you know, there can be anxiety that comes with the unknown while you're working intensely towards something. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Awesome, thank you, Ben. So it seems like a lot of what's been brought up has been sort of that one of the biggest barriers that entrepreneurs face is sort of external things like people and sometimes maybe bureaucracies, things like that. But I'm just curious, can you think of any mistakes that you've made as you were starting your projects, working on them, and that perhaps our audience can learn from? Anything you wish you would have done differently? So maybe we'll go in reverse order for that. So starting with Ben and ending, or starting with Chloe is good too.
I mean, I actually don't think that we've made that many big mistakes, but I think like my number one recommendation to myself always is to push to get things done faster, because everything just takes such a long time, and it always takes more time than you think. And it really requires you to be kind of constantly like in this hustling mentality, constantly pushing yourself faster than you feel like you should be going to take even like the smallest steps forward, just because everything takes so much time. So I don't know, if I could go back to like a previous Chloe and like give myself advice, it would be like push for things to happen faster and get rid of things that don't work as soon as you know they don't work, or get rid of people that don't work for you as soon as you don't work. That's been very challenging for us because you know, we don't pay anyone anything, so every kind of staff member that we have is all completely volunteer. So it's again about like accepting help because it's help. You know, sometimes there's people that you kind of need to let go from your organization that can be difficult when, you know, they're just giving you of their free time and of their energy. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Awesome. Mitalie?
Okay, so we're talking about mistakes, right? I'd say the same thing. I don't think that we've encountered any major mistakes, because every time a minor thing came up, we'd address it right away and try to work around it or find a solution. But just something I've done that I wish I could have done differently. So I'm the more technical, scientific brain behind Grounded, and my business partner is the business brain. And I remember one thing, obviously, that I would have done differently is planning in terms of the analysis for the compost. Keep in mind, I do PhD research and Grounded research. That's two completely different things. They're not related at all. So it was pretty tough to schedule time to do data analysis for the compost. And I kept making, the machine kept breaking down, and I made the mistake of not doing a total nutrient analysis. I decided to be all fancy and do like individual nutrient analysis, and that just created more stress on myself. And so planning, for me, I would say, and I do a better job of it now, but I'd say better planning and managing time, because I have a very busy schedule too. I'm a PhD student. I'm working on a startup company, and on top of that, I have a part-time job as a project manager. So that was a huge challenge. But, you know, and sometimes I would say, oh, this is such a fail, or that's such a fail. But you learn a lot through mistakes. And one thing I've learned through my entrepreneurship journey so far is that I've looked at failure differently. I look at it as a learning opportunity, and I don't let it get me down as much as it used to get me down. And I'd say as an entrepreneur, your perception of failure and the way you react to failure should change. You know, you should be very optimistic and use it to push you forward. Because everyone that said, you know, like, that we couldn't get from A to B, that energy is what drives us and inspires us. So there we go.
Awesome. And Ben?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. It's hard to say that what we've done, that maybe some of the more challenging things too are mistakes per se, especially within the co-op sector, because you know it's not just one person that's like making decisions. Like, but for us, it's like between 10 and 20 people, depending on the context. Sometimes, obviously, not all the time, but like organizational decisions. You know, our board has 11 people, and they're involved in like high level decisions regularly. But if I were to do it again and outside of like a university context, I would say that like picking the core team that you work with and ensuring that communication is very strong between the core team is something that you want to definitely do. And then another one would be that you know, we only had about 5 months between our elections, which was like an election that allowed us to like start these projects, and when they had to open their doors in September. So we had our context didn't really allow for us to do all of the things that we needed to do. There was a 5-month period, plus we had to organize orientation and whatnot, because we were actually like running the student union at Concordia, and these were like hugely ambitious projects that we took on. But I would say just to make sure, like if you're starting a co-op or like a nonprofit or something like that, that you want to have the high-level processes for how people can be involved in decision-making, and sort of like the I guess like the bylaws that outline like the core of the organization. You want those to be understandable from the outside and implemented from day one, so that people within the organization can kind of know what to expect in a given situation. And so whenever something comes up, it's not kind of an unknown for the people who don't have all the same information as you. Like we have some people within the core who really know what's going on all the time, but then we also cycle through like staff members, because we have about 25 staff within the organization, and so some of them like come and go. Other one like you know, people that work in the kitchen, for example, and sort of like our baristas and whatnot, they're not there for like 3 years. They're not there the whole time. Sometimes they're just there for a year. So there's like communication challenges that are there, and so if you have core processes in place, that can kind of relieve some of the stress. So I mean, if you're starting a nonprofit or a co-op, I would say have those core processes in place.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. So Mitalie, you kind of touched on the idea that it's like how much stuff you have going on at the same time as running your business, and it's very, very many things.
Yeah.
So I guess starting with you, how would you say you kind of balance your life and school and other initiatives with your entrepreneurial pursuits?
You know what? I really wish I knew how I do this. I'm surprised I'm still alive right now. It's a lot, but I always say I just do it, you know? I think if you love something hard enough, you just find a way to make it work. And in this case, I know I'm a full-time PhD student, but I am aware that, you know, academia is not my route anymore for after my PhD is over. And so I made a conscious decision to do something productive that would, you know, allow me to be happy, because I love working on Grounded. I wake up every morning when I have Grounded stuff to do, and I have a big smile on my face, and, you know, I make my coffee and get my day going. But, you know, you just do it, and you have to be very organized. I try my best to be as organized as I can be, but, you know, Google Calendar on your smartphone helps. Always take my agenda with me. But yeah, I mean, you have to be passionate. and you have to have fire. And believe me, when you're working on something and you have that drive in you, you will just do it. But it's tough for me to relax. So I think that's a bigger challenge actually. How do I relax? But you know, you just have to hustle hard. It's not a secret. It's not a secret.
Awesome, thank you. So we are running a bit short on time, so I think what we'll do is we're gonna move to audience questions. We'll probably have enough time for one or two. Are there any? Yeah.
I actually think that instead of looking to external, you know, because there are a lot of things, you should actually look inwards. And I know it's a little cheesy, but I think that, you know, getting something off the ground is like a really, really big undertaking. It takes a lot of mental and physical energy. And I think, you know, as she was just saying, it really does take like a fire from within. It really needs to be something that you are super passionate about, because it is challenging and it's a lot of like self-motivation. It's a lot of, you know, your biggest obstacle for me anyways, it's a lot of the times myself, because I don't have other people to respond to. It's every work that gets done, like for my project, is always from me, you know? So I think you should find kind of your area first. What is it about social business? You know, what particular area is the most interesting to you? And kind of go from that way and then look outwards. Like, what is there based on that, you know? Kind of like make, I don't know, you can even like do a diagram of like what's important to me. And then based on that, find other organizations or things that can support your interests, instead of looking outwards and seeing how best you fit to them. Because that's also like the beauty of entrepreneurship, is that you're creating this new space for yourself in the world, for your space, for you and your organization. That would be my answer.
Mine might be a little different. I might say just dive right in. Like anywhere you see, just dive right in there. Like social entrepreneurship is inherently social, right? And so the only way you're going to become exposed to like what's actually going on is if you just kind of like jump in. That's anyways not the only way. I don't want to use like that kind of like language that's across the board or anything like that. But for me, it was definitely just like dive in, and then you realize just how much is going on. And then you'll definitely find a place that you can fit into it and like develop the skill that you want to develop. And I think that that's a good measure too, is if you're working with a group and they're not interested in like you also developing professionally through your involvement there, then maybe you're not with the right group. And try to find like a group of people that also puts your professional development into the development of the organization as well. That would be my advice.
So that's a great question. I would say kind of a mix of both the responses. Find what makes you tick, just something simple, and just jump right in. And then from there, it's easier to maneuver around. But also, don't be afraid to start your own thing that you don't see out there. So go for it.
Okay, we have time for one more. No one?
Well, you'll be able to come up maybe afterwards during the networking session if you have any questions that you'd like to ask more privately or anything. But
yeah, I think we'll call it there then. Thanks so much, Ben, Chloe, and Mitalie. It was really great to learn from your experiences. I think this is really, really applicable to our audience who are kind of in this stage where they may be interested in starting their own initiatives. And now we're going to take a brief 5-minute break as we prepare for the room for our workshop. And yeah, just a big round of applause for our panelists.